Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kinder, the Tiger Knights, and I, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch, and if you're looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 33 of Breaking Step. Tibs watched, stunned, as the rogue slipped past the guard unnoticed, pocketing another copper from the woman speaking with her. He picked this rogue because he wasn't particularly good, and his team wasn't due for a run until the next schedule. So they wouldn't be impacted by him spending a few days in his cell for theft, and had passed the test along through multiple intermediaries, so the rogue's action wouldn't be linked to him directly. Only it was looking like that wouldn't happen unless Tibs intervened, and he hadn't planned for that. He couldn't draw attention to the rogue's action, since that would make him stand out, and using essence within Marketplace ran the chance of someone sensing it and tracing it back to him. Maybe the good guards only patrolled Marketplace during the bazaar. Still, he knew a few good ones. A few good ones were here every so often. This rogue found herself surrounded by Serba's dogs within a few paces of picking the pocket. Then Serba was there, holding them and holding him. How did I go? And dragging him out of Marketplace. Tibs followed, waiting for Brogan to show up, but Serba reached a guard station without the adjutant. That doesn't have to be captain. The adjutant making an appearance. So, pickpocketing was below the man's notice. Tibs could solve that. The commotion disrupted Marketplace far more than Tibs expected. He'd had to pick a better rogue for this, so she was Ro, and her training had involved stealing from one of the merchants at the edge of Marketplace. Tibs had also ensured guards were tipped off something would happen. To be certain, she was caught, but she'd slipped through their attempt at apprehending her, and she was now giving them a chase through the alleys leading away. It was looking like she'd get away too, and Tibs couldn't have that. A small patch of ice and her foot slipped out from under her. She was quick to get back up, but it had been enough. It had been enough. The guards were on her before she could run again. Tibs kept following from the roofs, wrapped in darkness to ensure he was unnoticed, waiting for Brogan to arrive and take charge. Only they reached the guardhouse without the adjutant showing up. Maybe it was theft all around that Brogan didn't bother with. Arranging something more disruptive would take work. He wouldn't be able to use one of his runners, but Tibs was confident he'd be able to figure something out. It was chaos around the burning house. The arsonist Tibs had paid hadn't asked questions. He passed himself off as a servant of a lower noble in preparation for the man's inquiries. The noble had used this method before to force families who hadn't been interested in selling their home in service of the new wall the nobles wanted. The noble had used this method to force families who hadn't been interested in selling their home in service to the new wall the nobles wanted to leave Craggle Rock. But the man hadn't asked about the reason or the person behind the request. All he'd wanted to know was if Tibs had the money. Tibs had given him that, along with when the fire was to be set, since it had to happen when Brogan was on duty and when the family was out of the house, working at their tavern. The arsonist was caught quickly, his escape impeded by the quick response of both the guards, who, again, had been warned something would happen, and the townsfolk who rushed to contain the fire through a bucket chain. Tibs was proud of how quickly people acted to help. As he followed the guards taking the arsonist away, he sensed runners rushing to the fire. A few of them had water as their element. This time, Brogan met them before they reached a guardhouse, and Tibs dropped down to pick the man's pocket. But a crowd formed, slowing him, and even as he suffused himself with water to slip through them. When he reached the front of the crowd, the guards had formed a line between them and Brogan, who was questioning the arsonist. He slipped back out, since he couldn't get through the guards. Once they were on the move, Tibs would have a chance to act. Except that the crowd moved with them, demanding the arsonist be handed over for them to punish directly. It didn't thin. It didn't thin until the building came into view, and Tibs had to leave with them. He needed to rethink his approach. He found her at the fighters training field, watching the Omega and Upsilon fighters train. None of the experienced fighters took her on anymore, and one look at her metal-covered armor, and the younger ones knew they were outmatched. Sensing it, there was more metal in Cross's armor than he'd expected. Not only were there visible metal bars attached to the outside, but there was a thick sheet of it under the leather surface. "Light fingers," she greeted him. "What brings you here?" She pulled an item from her pouch. "Got a puzzle you like?" It was a cylinder with maze-like grooves over it and a metal ring at one end. "You need to get the ring off, but it only moves. I don't have the time." She studied him, then put the puzzle away with a shrug. "Then what can I do for you?" "I have a proposition for you." She looked him up and down. "Cute. I think you should find a girl closer to your age." "It isn't for me." She raised an eyebrow. "Someone asked you to proposition me on their behalf." She smirked. "Go tell them I'm not interested in someone who can't work up the courage of asking me himself." Tibs frowned. This was starting to feel like he was talking with Jackal when his friend purposely took the wrong meaning of what Tibs said. "I want to pay you to seduce someone." There shouldn't be a wish to misinterpret that, accidentally or on purpose. "I don't do the seducing thing," she replied, "and definitely not for money. I fight them, and if they impress me, then I'll fight. But you sell your services, right?" "I sell my service as guard." She studied him. "But because it's you, I'm curious. How much do you think it'll take to get me to bed someone for you?" With a quick sleight of hand, he flashed her the gold coin and made it vanish again. She hurriedly looked around. "Where did you—" "Never mind. I probably don't want to know." "Why?" "Does it matter?" he asked, mildly surprised. She studied him again, much longer. "I suppose not. To be clear, I'm not saying I'll do it. I'm not saying I will do it, but I will look at him. Although, with how much you're offering, I'm worried about who you want me to seduce." "Him," Tibbs pointed to Brogan as he left the guild for the day. She glanced at Tibbs, then Brogan again. "Okay, who is he? Because he's good looking, so I can't figure out why you need me to seduce him." "He's an adjutant to the guards," Tibbs answered, "and I know I can trust you to stick to the agreement. If this is about getting him into a compromising position so you can extort something, I don't know if you're paying me enough. Those always turn ugly." Tibbs shook his head. "I just need him distracted for a few hours." "Hours?" She smirked. "Do you know how this worked, Tibbs?" He shrugged. "You have fun for that time." She snorted. "A man can't last for hours, not without using herbs and stuff." "Jackal and Krosef do. Those two have a lot more to enjoy about each other than what I'm going to have with that guy." "At least tell me he doesn't have a special someone." "He doesn't." Tibbs had followed the adjutant through his days long enough to confirm that and other details. He likes women. He doesn't seem to care for their looks too much. He's been with some who are skinny, some thick, tall, and short. Each time they sound like they're having fun. "You've watched him have his fun?" "Have enough of Jackal and Krosef telling me of the fun they have. I'm not interested in watching it." I listened from the next room to be sure it was happening. Of course. She watched Brogan walking with the crowd. "You wouldn't want to go through all this, only to realize all he's doing is reading to the ladies." "Exactly." She glanced at him. "Okay. Have that gold ready, because I'm going to be back in a few hours to collect." Tibbs caught her arm. "Not now. Tomorrow. He has his midday meal at the Worm." Have him with you. Have him with you when you ask for a room at the from the barmaid. You have to get him out of his clothes. You've thought about it all, haven't you? As much as I can plan for. He struck up a friendship with the barmaid that worked over midday as part of getting access to the room next to where Brogan took his ladies for their fun, and she'd been amicable to let him have a double of the key in exchange for a few coins when the time came. If the guy doesn't pay for the room, you are, Cross said. This watch Cross accost Brogan, acting surprised and pleased as they exchanged words. The adjutant offered her a seat at his table, and quickly Cross moved to the one next to his, where they spoke and laughed in low voices. When she whispered something in his ear, he smiled and stood. They headed for the bar, where the barman greeted them joyfully. A few words, and she handed Brogan a key, and the two headed up the stairs. The key was on the bar as Tibs reached it. He palmed it, and he palmed it. He'd already paid for the room next to theirs, so he could wait. He didn't have to wait long until the soft conversation turned into grunts and moans. Tibs stepped into the deserted corridor and unlocked the door. He cracked it open, and the sound of passions increased in volume. A peek showed him Cross's exposed chest as she gyrated on Rogan's hip. She noticed him as he looked away and bent down to kiss the man. Tibs stayed low and hurried to the pile of clothing. He took the enchanted item, a medallion, and exited, closing and locking the door silently. Tibs walked along the mountain, away from the buildings and other runners. He didn't know how far in this direction Stowe's influence stretched, but he needed to be far enough to ensure no one saw what would happen. Stowe, he said when he thought he was far enough. Tibs, Stowe replied happily. I'm glad you came. I need you to make me a copy of this. He pulled the medallion from his hidden pocket. You need me to make you a copy, Stowe repeated slowly. You can do it. You can do this, right? It can't be more complicated than the armor you made me. That's not the problem, Stowe said. Do you see how you're acting? This isn't the Tibs I know. Stowe, I don't have a lot of time. I need to put this back before Cross is done with him. Tibs, friends just don't just... Can you do it? Tibs demanded. No, he can't, Ganny replied. Not now, Ganny, Stowe said. Come on, are you really going to let him treat her like that? Ganny, it's my decision. You know you're not supposed to. Really, Ganny? Aren't we past what I'm supposed or not to do? I think that after what we've pulled, if those them of yours were real, they'd have shown up by now. Ganny grumbled. Ganny's grumbling became fainter, and Tibs imagined her sulking away. I will do this, Tibs, Stowe said, because friends help each other. Good, but in return, I'd appreciate it if you let the ice go during your next run. No, Tibs, it isn't. I'm not putting you or anyone else at risk, Tibs snapped. He figured sounding angry would help make his point. If that means you aren't going to help me, fine. Tell me that, because I still need to return this before he notices it's gone. Then we are going to have a talk about what friends do for each other. Put it down and step away. I said I'd help you. A dozen pace will be enough. Still sounded tired. I wish you realized that what you're doing to yourself. This isn't you. This is who I have to be to make those who hurt my town pay. You're not doing it for the town, Tibs. I am. He filled the cracks. At least be honest about why you're doing it, Still said in a flat tone. I'm doing it to protect everyone. Once the guild is gone, anyone who might think of hurting us is going to know they're going to fail, that I'm too strong for them. That's why I'm doing it, Tibs stated. Still sighed. It's done. They're both where you left it. Tibs picked them up and sensed for any difference. What do they do? No idea. I've never seen this kind of weave before. I'm going to have to play with it to work out what I can use it for. I guess having something new to use against us is payment enough then, Tibs headed back. I told you, Tibs, I did this because friends help each other. If that was true, you wouldn't have asked me to let go of ice as part of this. The barmaid nodded, confirming Cross and Brogan hadn't left. Tibs paused before the door as the man cursed loudly. Where the fuck did you learn that? Why? Cross replied. You want me to do it again? I don't think I can. The rest devolved into a string of curses. He unlocked the door and cracked it only enough to see Brogan's back on his side with Cross's head between his legs. Whatever she was doing had him tensing and cursing even louder. Tibs hurried to slip the medallion back in the inside pocket he'd taken it from and retreated. He returned the key to the barmaid, then headed to the inn for food. He'd give the guild until tomorrow to discover what he'd done. If it didn't, then he'd find out what this medallion did. What the medallion did was make the guild building an ordinary one. Each corridor was where it should be, and their length never changed. The building was 9 times 101 1/8 paces wide, regardless of which floor he counted them on. It was 4 times 105 6 paces deep. That was only true when the medallion was in his hand or in his coin pouch. If he sent it to his secret pouch, then the building no longer made sense. You'd have to ask Stowe what about the secret pouch blocked the effect. He headed back to the main hall when he noticed the looks the clerks gave him and then went down the stairs to the cells. Haven't you spent enough time here? The guard asked with a chuckle. I need to talk with Jorleen, Tibs said. I don't know which one that is, the other guard said, but no one's allowed to talk with those in the cells. She raised a hand. I'm sorry, but not even the hero of Craggle Rock gets special treatment on that. The commander made it clear what would happen to anyone who let you inside. To anyone who disobeyed. Tibs nodded and headed up the stairs, making sure not to linger on the door that was now on his right. On the right. That was now on the right. And that concludes chapter 33 of Breaking Step. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next one's going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story, it and the previous books are up for free on Royal Road. If you want to support me, my Patreon is ahead of Royal by about 20 chapters. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the note, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.